All right, so at this time, we have a call to order in recognition of a quorum, being that we have majority of the members here, so we do have a quorum present. Do I have a motion to move forward as a quorum? All right, so at this time, we have a call to order in recognition of a quorum, being that we have majority of the members here, so we do have a quorum present. Do I have a motion to move forward as a quorum? I would need Mr. Presley or Mr. Daniels to unmute and present a motion.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Testing 1, 2.
I can hear you, Cody. Can you hear me?
All right, I can hear you. All right, cool. All right, I'll make a motion that we proceed.
We have a motion that a quorum is present. Do I have a second? Mr. Price, I'll second that motion.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Spearman has also joined us. Okay. We can take a vote on that motion. Those in favor, McLeese,
Aye.
Presley,
Aye.
Daniels, Daniels. He's still muted. Spearman.
What was the motion on the floor, Mr. Price?
Call the order.
Approve.
3 and now from Daniels, so that motion passes. Okay.
All right. Some general housekeeping notes before we get started. In accordance with the Freedom of Information Act, a copy of the agenda was sent to radio and TV stations, newspapers, persons requesting notification, and posted on the bulletin board located in the lobby of the county administration. Is this correct, Mr. Price?
Yes.
All right. At this time, I'd like to present a motion to adopt the agenda, but there needs to be a modification made on number 4, the approval of minutes. Was that sent to everyone, Mr. Price?
No, we will defer the approval of minutes until the next meeting.
All right. I figured that might be the case with the reconsideration we have. So we'll remove number 5 it is, not number 4, pardon me. And the public hearing will now be number 5. Other business will be number 6, and the adjournment will be number 7. All right. At this time, I'd like to present a motion to adopt the agenda as written or as modified. Do I have a second?
Motion to approve with the exceptions to the printed agenda for today's meeting.
Okay, that motion was made by, was that you, Mr. McLeese, or was that Mr. Spearman?
I thought the motion was from Mr. McLeese, but
You're gonna second that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. All right. Now we can do a roll call. Those in favor of the adoption of the agenda, McLeese,
Aye.
Spearman,
Aye.
Presley,
Aye.
Daniels. So Daniels is.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Okay. That motion passes.
All right, we would like to welcome everyone to our board meeting this afternoon. This board is a quasi-court, meaning that we will hear evidence from the parties involved, and then this board will render a decision based on that evidence. Unfortunately, with most decisions, some people may not be pleased with the outcome and others may be pleased with the outcome. We just ask that you try to refrain from any emotional outburst or anything during these decisions. Thank you. The order of presentation will go, Mr. Price will present for the Planning Commission, and then we'll have the applicant who submitted the variance or the request present their case, and then any opposition will go. And then the applicant can offer a rebuttal after opposition presents theirs, if there is any. The agenda, the board ordered as board needs to conduct business. Some cases take longer than others, depending on the complexity of issues and the number of witnesses. Any individuals testifying here today will be asked to address their remarks to the board. Do not address them to the other individuals in the room. No demonstrations, no emotional outbursts, no testimony from anyone other than those at the podium, which we don't have a podium, but any individuals who are sitting behind their webcam. We will ask everyone who is participating in the meeting today who wants to testify to take an oath. Do not promise anything that you are not willing to do or that you are unable to do. This court, like we said earlier, is not it is a quasi court. It's not as formal as a proceeding you would go to in front of a judge. We will accept documents you've submitted to Mr. Price and the Planning Commission, even those that have come in at last minute, and we will weight them appropriately. All right. Let's see. After all the facts have been heard, the board will convene and discuss the facts of the case, and then we will render a decision. And then that decision will be approved later down the road at a later date. And then once it's approved or disapproved at a later date, the Planning Commission will send out to the applicant the approval or denial formally. All right. At this time, anyone who does have substantial interest in a decision made by the board today may request reconsideration of the decision prior to the approval of minutes. This request must be based on a specific error made by the board. You may obtain more information about this process from Mr. Price, the zoning administrator. Does someone have something? You may also appeal to a circuit court, which Mr. Price can provide you more information on that process as well. At this time, some general housekeeping rules. If you're not speaking, we ask that you please mute your computer so as not to interrupt others. And at this time, if we have any witnesses wishing to testify in the hearing today, would you please raise your right hand and take the oath? And we would also, we'll get your name and address after, before you testify momentarily. So at this time, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
All right. And did anyone answer in the negative? I don't believe I heard anyone, Gio.
No, sir.
All right. At this time, we'll move forward with the public hearing. I don't see Mr. Berry on. Is he attending the meeting today?
Yes, he is.
I'm here.
Mr. Berry was just sworn in.
He was sworn in. All right. Very good. At this case, at this time, the board will hear if Mr. Price would present his opening remarks on the case ZV 21-004.
Yes, sir. Okay. Your first item is ZV 21-004 variance. The applicant is requesting the Board of Zoning Appeals to grant a variance to encroach into the required rear yard setback on property zone RSLD, which is residential single family low density. The location is 201 Amenity Road. It's in Chapin, South Carolina. The property is currently undeveloped. The applicant is proposing to construct a residential structure which will encroach into the required rear yard by 18 feet at the furthest point. The area surrounding the subject site is residentially developed. The applicant is proposing to construct a 3,000, a little bit less than 3,500 square foot residential structure, which will encroach into the required 20-foot rear yard setback by 18 feet at the furthest point. Approximately 439 square feet of the structure will be located within the required setback. The remainder of the structure will conform to the RSLD zoning designation requirements. The minimum lot area for a parcel in the RSLD zoning designation is 12,000 square feet, and the lot width is 75 feet. This particular parcel, or the subject parcel that you have before you, is 9,497 square feet, which is a little bit about 2,500 square feet less than what's required for that zoning designation. And also the lot width is about 25 feet, which is about 50 feet less than what's required for the RSLD zoning designation. The adjacent parcels along this area are conforming as it relates to lot size and width. This seems to be the only parcel that is non-conforming. A majority of the structures, according to county records, were constructed prior to zoning, which was about 1978. So there are no records of any variances that have been obtained by any of the other uses. Staff believes that this request meets all of the criteria required for a variance, as the extraordinary, I'll go through those. Extraordinary and exceptional conditions, the nonconformity of the parcel in addition to the required setbacks for the district restricts the square footage and configurations of the proposed structure. B, conditions applicable to other properties. Staff determined that the other parcels in the general area of the subject site are conforming in area and width. C, application to ordinance restricting utilization of property. While applying the setback requirements for the RSLD district would not fully prevent the utilization of the parcel, it does restrict construction that is in character with the adjacent structures. And D, substantial detriment of granting variance. There will be no substantial detriment to the surrounding properties if the variance is granted. As stated by staff, looking at this parcel as compared to the other parcels, this is the only parcel that is not conforming. And again, we go with the square footage, require minimum lot area, for a subject site in the RSLD district, and also as it relates to the lot width also. That is it for staff. And I believe that you have within your package on page 6, it does have a site plan that is proposed by the Berries for their proposed structure. That is it for staff's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Price. At this time, does anyone of the board have any questions for Mr. Price? Mr. Price, I do have one question. Was there anyone signed up in opposition of this house being built?
No, sir. We've not
outlined.
received any comments or any calls regarding this request. The only only people that have signed up to speak on this request are the applicants, and they're both on the Zoom call.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mhm. Any other questions of Mr. Price before we move on to the applicant? All right. At this time, I would ask the Mr. Berry if he would like to speak to the construction, to the variance being requested.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Scott Berry, and I'm here today with my wife, Dana Berry. We live here in the Ballantyne area and purchased this property at 201 Amenity Lane last year. And we have hopes of being able to build a new home on the property. I made a few notes I just want to go over, but I'd like to go on record as agreeing with Mr. Price. He seemed to have covered the facts pretty well in his presentation, and my wife and I appreciate the work that he put in and agree with his findings. We do feel the lot is non-conforming. If you look at the lot shape, it is an unusual shaped lot and a small lot for the neighborhood that we hope to build in. It is the last remaining undeveloped lot, as you can see from the picture as well. All the other lots were constructed some 40 plus years ago. There's 11 houses total. That includes ours if we're granted the variance or are able to build. And as you can see from the placement on the drawing, we're asking for a variance. If you're standing on Amenity Road facing the front of the house, it would be on the left rear corner of the house. So it'd be on the side away from our closest neighbor, which would be standing on Amenity Road to the right. And there's quite a bit of distance between us and our neighbor on that side of the property. All the other property that surrounds the lot is Dominion or lake property or Lake Murray. It's our desire to construct a house in this neighborhood that's in keeping with the rest of the houses in the neighborhood. We'd like to build one that is representative of the other houses in the community. And I'd like to also go on record as saying we've communicated with our neighbors. There's an association in this neighborhood, and we've communicated through emails and also in person with most of our neighbors. And to my knowledge, all of our neighbors have been in agreement with this variance request. Particularly the ones that are that we share a lot line with. We've had a lot of conversations with them, and they support in our variance request. And hopefully, this will be the house that my wife and I are able to build and we end up retiring in. So we plan to be on this property for a long time, and hopefully we'll get our request granted. That's pretty much it. We just ask that consider it and grant our variance. And we'll happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Yes, do please hold on because we may have some questions, and I appreciate your testimony, Mr. Berry.
Yes, sir.
All right. Did your wife wish to speak as well, or are you good, ma'am? All right, thank you. All right, at this time, does anyone of the board have any questions for Mr. or Mrs. Berry? Gio, can you bring up the previous picture that y'all had up of the house, the structure itself?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I did have some questions when looking at the architectural rendering here.
Right.
Mr. Berry, is this the only way the house could be built on the property or if it was rotated in any way, would it infringe upon the other side yard setbacks and rear setbacks?
I think yes, sir, it would. We've looked at a number of different options, and from the person that we have that's doing the house drawings, we have to have a certain amount of square feet on the front side to be able to pull a car in and park. They told us that we need at least 35 feet to be able to comfortably turn a car into the lot and park in the driveway or the house. So that's the reason that we're requesting a variance on that back corner, is to have enough room for our driveway.
All right. And it looks like most of the variance is that a back porch that's going to be encroaching on most of the variance, a small portion of the house as well.
It is. That's correct.
Right.
And what you don't see on the plats, there's quite a bit of fringe land that's dominion around that property line.
Mm-hmm.
That if you go to the other picture, it gives you a little better detail, but there's some fringe dominion on property that surrounds that lot line.
And what we're looking at here as far as encroaching on the rear setback, that's not going to encroach on any of Dominion's property, is it?
Not at all.
All right.
Chair, would you put up the aerial, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Spearman.
Okay, yeah, the aerial that's in our packet. Could you put that up? Thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, I've got a couple of questions, please.
Go ahead.
Mr. Barry, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing good, sir. Thank you for asking. It appears to me, by looking at this aerial that's on the screen and also in our packet, that this lot is similar to a baseball diamond.
Does look that way, doesn't it?
Yes, sir, it sure does. And by looking at this aerial, the way that it's presented to us right now, you're saying the top portion of that line heading back to the water is where you're asking for the variance, not to encroach on the 360 high water mark, but is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
If from the aerial, if you see the dock on that very top right corner of the screen,
Yes, sir.
that's the corner that we're asking for the variance on the
All
property.
right, sir. Okay. And this would not deter any of your neighbors or traffic or anything else that the ordinance covers. I believe Mr. Price covered everything very well in his presentation.
No, it would not.
Okay.
We would not infringe on any of our neighboring property.
All right. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gio, you said earlier this was the only non-conforming lot on the parcel or on the island there itself?
Yes, sir. Staff went and looked at all of the parcels, did a little measurement and used all the information we had. And this is the only parcel that does not meet the minimum 12,000 square feet for that zoning designation or SLD.
Looking at that picture there, have we had any prior cases in this area? Because it looks like some of those houses are encroaching or right on top of the side yard setbacks.
Yes, sir. As I stated, one of the things we also looked at, there are no variance requests of record for any of the parcels along this stretch or along this peninsula. And also our records show that all of the homes were built prior to 1978, which is when zoning came into effect. So they were built outside of those regulations.
All right. Thanks, sir. Are there any other, any further questions of Mr. and Mrs. Berry before we allow them to mute? All right. At this time, I'll take any discussion that the board would like to have amongst ourselves in regards to this variance.
Mr. Chair, I believe between Mr. Price's testimony and Mr. Berry's testimony, they have presented a case that that this is exactly what a variance is designed to do, according to Richland County Code, is to allow a non-conforming lot like this to be used. So I feel that that all my questions have been answered, and I can't speak for my other members of the board. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome. Thank you too, Mr. Spoon. Yeah, this case had a lot of details in it. Gio, you did cover it very well, and Mr. Berry, thank you for your testimony. Mr. Presley, did you have something?
Negative, Mr. Chair. Just pretty much looking over everything again and reading through all the details that Mr. Price provided us with, and Mr. and Mrs. Berry. I think I have everything I need in order to make a motion. Not sure if anybody else has anything prior to me making a motion. Mr. Daniels has anything for the board.
Mr. Price, we need to go through the finding of fact prior to a motion.
You could, or in this particular case, as staff has already gone over those the requirements for a variance request, you could just go along with staff's findings as part of your motion.
All right, Mr. Presley, if you'd like to go ahead and make a motion, please do.
All right, so I want to make a motion that we concur with staff's findings and not grant a variance. I'm sorry, excuse me, to grant the variance.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion to approve.
We have a second. Mr. Price, would you please take a roll call?
All right, those in favor of the motion to grant the variance, McAleese,
Aye.
Spearman,
Aye.
Presley,
Aye. Sorry.
Daniels.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes.
All right, Mr. and Mrs. Berry, congratulations. You have your, well, you don't have it yet, so don't go doing anything just yet, except on your own, willingness to do so. But staff will be in touch with you about the variance, and congratulations.
Fantastic. Thank you all.
Okay.
All right. At this time, we have section 6, other business, reconsideration of case ZV 21-003, Mr. and Mrs. Hall on their variance. And before we get started on the reconsideration motion, I want to read what it would take to do or have a reconsideration according to the rules of procedure.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If you don't mind, while you're sharing, I can actually put that on the screen also, so everyone can see exactly what you're referring to.
All right. Yes, please. All right. So at any time before the approval of minutes, a reconsideration can be asked for by the applicant. In this case, the June 2nd, 2021 meeting, Mr. and Mrs. Hall have requested a reconsideration of the variance they requested for their fence being a foot taller than what the ordinances of Richland County allow for the zoning district they're in. So there is no right of reconsideration of any decision by the board. However, a person who may have substantial interest in any decision of the board may request reconsideration at any time prior to the approval of minutes reflecting the action taken. Requests for reconsideration shall be delivered to the zoning administrator in writing, setting forth plainly, fully, and distinctly why the decision of the board is in error based on the following reasons: mistake of law, mistake of fact, inadvertence, excusable neglect, newly discovered evidence which by due diligence could not have been discovered in time for the hearing, fraud, misrepresentation, other misconduct of a party in interest, or evidence of a material, clerical, or other error. Unmeritorious requests for reconsideration or requests based on the aggrieved party's desire simply for another hearing shall be denied. A request for reconsideration shall be based and acted upon entirely the written request submitted pursuant to this subsection, provided, however, that testimony may be allowed only by leave of the board. The board may call witnesses for limited testimony and needed to develop an understanding of the nature of the request. I did take time to read through each of the applicants' points in the email or letter that they submitted to Mr. Tommy. Where did I put those? The case from last week. GOI, I'm looking for that. Is this motion for reconsideration, if one's presented, something that only myself and Mr. Spearman can vote on, since we were the only ones present last week, other than Ms. Derek? Or could Mr. Daniels and Mr. Presley also vote in a motion or submit a motion if they feel up to standard on the case?
Based on a previous determination, I think from our legal department, they can vote on this particular request, as they were aware of the previous request itself, and also based on the information that was provided at requesting the reconsideration of the case. So everyone can take a vote on this particular reconsideration.
All right. So even without the meeting minutes for them to go through for the last meeting, they would still be considered up to par with what they need to be up to par with based on the facts that were sent out in the original case.
Yes, sir, because they can look at the actual language that's contained within the reconsideration and make a determination if any of the criteria that you read previously would apply.
Are Mr. and Mrs. Hall present for the reconsideration today? Or are they not allowed to be present, or how does that work?
Again, your request is based upon the written request that you have before you, which starts on page 7.
Right.
If the board feels the need to ask questions of the requester, we can try to get them on the phone, but typically, or at least, as stated within your rules of procedure, the request is considered based on the written testimony, or at least the written request, as opposed to a verbal.
All right. There were a couple things in here I may have wanted to clarify with them, but if they're not present, that's okay.
Like I said, if you would like, staff can try to get in contact with them.
I don't think that's necessary. Unless anyone else feels like they need them present to vote on our reconsideration or put forth a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have reviewed the documents that were provided by the Halls that is in this packet that we received from Mr. Price. And I would like to make a motion to deny the request for reconsideration, and that would be for case ZV21-003.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Presley.
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Price, we have a motion on the floor. Would you please do a roll call?
All right, so the motion is for the denial of the request for reconsideration of case ZV 21-003. Those in favor of the motion? McLeese,
Aye.
Spearman,
Aye.
Presley,
Aye.
Daniels.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes.
All right. Well, at this time, seeing that we have no other business on the books, we do have a full board today. Gio, do we need to do a formal vote for officers while we have everyone here today, or is that something we need to do later?
If that is something that the board would like to proceed with, we can.
All right. I'll leave that up to everyone else if y'all want to have a formal appointment of officers at this time, since we have all 4 members present.
Mr. McLeese,
I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Spearman. But we do have another gentleman who was appointed to the board, but he won't start until the minutes for his appointment have been approved by council. So if there's a case, in August or September, whichever the next case is, he will be present for that meeting. So again, we can proceed with the 4 that are present now, or we can wait until we have all 5 members of the board.
Mr. McLeese, I'd like to go ahead and make an amendment to our agenda and add election of officers be case, or be 0. It would come after other business. I would like to go ahead and vote on officers.
All right. Do we have a second? I'll second that motion, Mr. Spearman. Mr. Price, would you do a roll call, please?
Okay, those in favor of adding election of officers to the agenda, McLeese,
Aye.
Spearman,
Aye.
Presley,
Aye.
Daniels.
Aye.
All right. And motion passes.
And do we need to go ahead and change the agenda around to add that in?
I think your motion
Do we
did
need to
that.
make an amendment to the agenda?
No, sir, I think your motion did that as you outlined it. So now we can go ahead and start the election of for the chair. Or any nominations?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a nomination for chair.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, please.
I'd like to nominate you for chair, Richland County Board of Zoning Appeals.
There's a nomination on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Price, we have a motion on the floor for the nomination. Would you please take a roll call?
Okay. Are those in favor? McLeese,
Aye.
Spearman,
Aye.
Presley,
Aye.
Daniels.
Aye.
Okay. That motion passes.
And at this time, I'd like to make a motion for a nomination of Vice President, Mr. Price, and that nomination will be for Mr. Presley. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Price?
Okay. Do we have any other nominees for the vice chair?
At this time, I would like to nominate Mr. Daniels.
Now, do we have a second? Okay, that motion dies for lack of a second.
Well,
And we can go
Mr. Presley, are you asking for Mr. Daniels to be VP due to maybe not being able to fill that role in the future, or is there a reason for that request?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Just due to conflict and not knowing necessarily how my career path is about that. Due to career and some personal family matters.
All right. In light of the testimony Mr. Presley just gave us, I'll second his motion, Mr. Price.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion then, please. For vice chair.
All right, go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Daniels for vice chair of Richland County Board of Zoning Appeals.
Second. Or I second that.
okay. All right, so we have Mr. Lonnie Daniels as for vice chair. Begin the roll call. Those in favor, McLeese,
Aye.
Spearman,
Aye.
Presley,
Aye.
Daniels.
Aye.
All right. So that motion passes, and our new officers are Jason McLeese is the chair, and the vice chair is Lonnie Daniels.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your nomination. I'll try to do my best. It's going to be hard to fill Miss Derrick's shoes. I already miss her. So, yeah. So, all right. Does anyone have any other business to discuss before we adjourn?
One question for Mr. Price, please.
Sure.
Mr. Price,
Yes, sir.
do we have any cases on the books for August?
We have one potential case, but we're still discussing that with the applicant. But right now, we do have one request that's been submitted.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Price, if you would, in the next packet that goes out, include in Mr. Daniels' packet the same information that you gave me, the rules of procedure, the call to order, stuff like that,
Yes, sir.
just in case something should come up. I don't anticipate not being there, but just in case.
All right. I'll be more than happy to include that.
All right. Mr. Daniels, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Gio has my information, but if you need it, just let me know and I'll be glad to send it your way. At this time, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Jason.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Spearman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Presley. Gio, we have a motion on the floor.
All right. Those in favor for adjournment, McLeese,
Aye.
Spearman,
Aye.
Presley.
Aye.
Daniels.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes and the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you very much. See y'all next month, maybe.